What do you think?
Come on, Ifrit. Show us your true power.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of our newest series, the Gaming Duo Review. On our first episode, we're going to be reviewing Final Fantasy XVI. Kelvin, this has been a long time coming. We've talked about this game. We adore this game. Are you ready to talk about this game and give an actual review?
I am stoked, man. It's been, like you said, a long time coming, and I am just eager to just let everything out. It's going to be full spoilers, and I'm just ready to talk about it with you.
So that is a disclaimer. There will be spoilers. There will be story points talked about. So just be prepared for that. If you haven't beat the game yet, I would hold off on watching this video. But if you beat the game, awesome.
Come back.
Go ahead.
Come
Come
back to
back.
us.
Yeah, exactly. So the game is Final Fantasy 16. It was released on June 22nd, 2023. Publisher Square Enix. Platform PS5 and PC will get a port eventually. Or so they say. We don't know. So we're going to be separating this into segments. All right. So we're going to be giving a grade based on performance, fun factor, replayability, story if applicable, and improvements to the game if we were to add it. So realistically, those are kind of the four pillars we're basing the review on. So let's start with performance. Performance, we're going to tackle graphics, sound, voice acting, and how the game runs. Take it away, Kelv.
Yeah, man. So Final Fantasy 16, I guess for me, I want to start with the sound. The sound is probably one of the best out there right now. The attention to detail, right? I just remember Clive, like you hear Clive's leather as you're running through the game, right? And that it's just like a nice little attention to detail. And the soundtrack was composed by Mayoyoshi Soken, who's the lead composer and sound director of Final Fantasy XIV and the expansions as well. So that's pretty cool. And it uses like this cool thing that he kind of implemented himself. It's called the mini Soken system. And that's kind of like on your PS5 specifically, that it kind of edits the music in real time and it adjusts the volume to match like the style and speed of each individual gameplay. So like again, attention to detail, right? Like that's something that you don't typically see in games nowadays, but here they are just kind of like bringing that, like just kind of bringing up that performance and just like really making use of the PS5 and also just having that audio design specific for Final Fantasy 16.
I couldn't agree more about the sound. The sound, it will just pump you up, and you have pump up songs, you have serene songs for very delicate moments in the game,
Yes.
epic moments. There's this full orchestra going on at the most epic parts of the game. I remember I was just at the gym earlier and I'm literally listening to the soundtrack. The song is called Find the Flame, and it's just like gets you so pumped. Like it's great. It just feels so epic. Devil May Cry. Big
Yeah.
Devil May Cry fan, obviously, but there was something similar in Devil May Cry where, based on the rank of your moves, you would rank up as you're doing more combos and enemies from D to S rank, right?
Okay.
So
Yep.
as you kept ranking up, the sound would get louder, louder, and louder. And I know a lot of games do this now. I believe it was Metal Gunslinger or something like that, Hellsinger.
Yeah.
It was a new
Yes.
game. So as you keep doing combos and getting actions correct, it does that. So I love that in games, and this game has it, and it's great. Soundtrack aside, let's talk about like the voice acting. Like,
Oh my god. Oh my
whew.
god. So many well written characters in this game, right? But like you have to give props to the charm and just the respected voice actors, right? So like Ben Starr, for example, he's the voice of Clive, did an amazing job capturing each emotional aspect of Clive, right, in his journey. So like from pain to anger, he like embodied what Clive was feeling at that time, and he embodied that perfectly, right? The same thing with I forget his name, his last name, at least Ralph Ineson, I think his name, Ineson. he brings Sid to life in this game, right? And he is probably one of my favorite characters in this game. He just has like this particular voice that you'll just know that he's in the room.
I only know what you used to say. That you were tired of running. That you just wanted to be free. Free of it all. You weren't lying to me then, so what changed? What made you think you had to sacrifice who you were to get what you wanted?
Like you said, I think you've mentioned it before in previous conversations where like when he talks, you focus on him. You're listening to him because he's such a, he's there. He's right in front of you and he has this like well voiced character, So he's one of my favorite characters in the game. And everybody else, the cast in general, phenomenal.
Yeah, exactly. And you are any language that you put this game on
Yeah.
sounds amazing. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
going to say Sid in particular for the English voice acting is incredible, and you're
Mhm.
kind of doing a disservice if you don't hear him. At least hear him in that language, but it's just top notch. And I just think they did, out of all the Final Fantasies, I think they did an incredible job with the voice acting. This is one of my favorites in the series as far as voice actors go. Again, like you said, Ben Starr and Clive, he made that character feel so, you feel so connected to that character, I guess to say, because you go through this whole journey with him. So voice acting, again, top notch. Kudos to the development team for choosing the actors to portray these amazing characters.
And just to go back a little bit more to Ben Starr, like the amplitude of different highs and lows of his voice,
Yes.
it just feels like it's a different character, but it's not. It's like it almost feels like very natural in a sense, right? Where like he has this calm, collective voice for the most part, right? When he's talking to other characters and when he's like, just having a conversation with different characters. But then when he's in battle, he has this like darker, demonic
It's
voice where he's
guttural.
like,
You'll get no pity from me, Kuka. No pity. And no mercy.
yeah, dude. And it just sounds so badass. It doesn't take away from it. It doesn't feel like out of like left
Forced.
field. It doesn't feel forced. It just feels like, yeah, I would, if I was slaying like enemies like this, I would probably sound like this. I'd probably have this like, oh, like type of voice.
Right.
It feels,
Tighten
bomb
it. Like,
it. Oh my
yeah,
God, dude.
like so good. Like
It
shout out to
fits
Ben Starr.
perfect. It fits perfect. So yeah, Ben Starr, phenomenal job. Like you couldn't have done a better job with Clive.
Yeah, I think they picked that role perfectly, and again, perfect voice acting in my opinion. I don't think it gets much better than this. Let's kind of move on to the graphics and kind of how the game runs. This part is kind of a little wishy-washy, if I would say, right? So the graphics, they're great. They're good graphics. Runs 4K. It looks amazing, and everything looks like stunning.
Mhm.
But when you put the game on performance mode,
Yeah.
things start to get a little janky. It's not. It says it's supposed to be running at 60 frames per second at 1080p, but it just doesn't look as good as graphics mode. So during my gameplay, like my playing,
Playthrough.
playthrough, I switched from performance to graphics, which I never do. I never ever play in graphics mode. I always play in performance mode. But in this game, I ended up picking graphics because it just looked better and the frame rate was more steady. What about you? How did you think of like the graphics and the frame rate?
For the most part, I start off with performance mode because I just want that like like crisp, like frame rate. And obviously we're playing almost like a Devil May Cry game, so I want the best frames possible. This didn't do that for some reason,
Right.
right? For some reason, mostly when I was having the icon battles, it would dip in frames a lot. Like it would be relatively noticeable. And it kind of took me away from those
Right.
epic moments, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But that kind of took me away from it because I'm seeing the frames drip, the flames.
The
Oh
frames
my
dripping.
God, the frames dip, right? And it just, I'm like, oh man, like that's not what it's supposed to do. Like I'm in performance mode for God's sakes, right? So I switched I switched back to quality mode, and it
That's
ran
what's called
butter smooth.
quality.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
ran butter smooth. Like after that, I had no issues. So there's some issues with the performance mode, but I'm sure with some updates they can definitely fix that if it's not already fixed.
And this is kind of a minor gripe for me is the motion blur. I'm not a big fan of
That's
motion
right.
blur. I hate motion blur. It makes me nauseous when I have it on the game. This game had it on super high. You actually couldn't
On
take it
10.
off on 10. I don't think you could adjust it in the beginning. They did
Yeah.
now they have an update where you can actually adjust it. But you actually notice a motion blur in this game. You never notice motion blur, and you had to turn it off too, right?
It is kind of annoying. It is kind of bothersome. And so from there on, I was like, oh man, now now I need an update. I need an update for them to like fix this blur. And so they eventually did, and I toned it down a little bit. So it's fixed now, but it was never an issue before until this game for some reason.
Right. And again, back onto how it runs, like this game is pretty much free of bugs. There's really no bugs in this game. Nothing's acting too out of control. There's so much happening on screen at some point to the game that you're like, how is this game still running? How am I seeing this? How is nothing like screen tearing? There's nothing like happening. It's just running smooth for the most part, like when all this action is happening. So again, kudos to developers on being able to do something like this, with having that. And trust me, there was some crazy stuff that happens in this game.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
absolutely obscene, just absurdity. Let's move on to fun factor and
Okay.
replayability. So, fun factor is how did you enjoy the game? Are you going to go back and play it? What did you like about the game? Basically, the how much fun did you have playing? So, I'll pass it over to you, Kelv. Like, what were some things that really stood out to you in this game, and what made you gravitate toward this game?
The game is incredibly fun. It is almost it just it's oozing with style. It's oozing with just like cool stuff happening on your screen all at once. And so I think the big major thing to take away from this game is the icon fights, right? That happens throughout the story. And so for me, the icon fights you can kind of picture in your head. They're mixed between like kaiju fights, between Dragon Ball Z,
God of War,
and God of War
like
3,
Richie,
right?
yeah.
God of War 3 is what I always kind of try to compare this game to, because back in the day, God of War 3 for me, still one of my favorite games of all time. They had these like spectacle moments that I'm sure people that have played, you guys that have played this game will know what I'm talking about, right? Like even the first 15 minutes of the game, you're like, holy shit, this is incredible. So that was what I always compared it to, right? This game does that, and I think it even takes it up tenfold. Like it just does crazy stuff that I think you've said it before. Your jaw is literally dropped throughout the entire scene, right? And I think that's a perfect way to compare this thing. It's a spectacle. It's a jaw dropping experience that you need to experience. If it's not for the story, if it's not for the characters, it's for those like fast paced icon battles that you see throughout the game. Even like the fast paced action RPG combat that you have throughout the game, it's great. But like these icon battles are the pinnacle. That's what you're looking for in this game.
Right, and the good thing is there's quite a few icon fights within the
Yeah.
game, so you experience it quite a bit. And just the gameplay in general, just whenever you just fight a regular enemy, the
Yeah.
combat is so addictive and easy, and it
Mhm.
never gets old. Every hit has weight to it.
Yep.
All your abilities, you get to like mix and match your abilities. They do an amazing job with the icon system where you can choose different icons and use their abilities, but you can also mix and match with all these different things. So there's a lot here to basically make it your own game style. I know Kelvin and me have two different game styles. By the end of the game, he was using completely different icons than I was. So
Yeah.
it is robust. You can go ahead and customize it how you want. The game does like level you up. You do level up. That we'll talk about that more in improvements. But for the most part, the fightings is great. And yes, I know this game has been mixed with, oh, it's not traditional RPG, it's more action RPG. Yes, it is, but the fact that you can change these icons give it that RPG element. So I didn't miss it as much as I thought I would,
Mm.
because I was able to mix and match those abilities. But
I'll speak more on that when we get to the cons of the game and the needs of
sure.
improvements, right? But I will say the pacing of the game is actually really well done. To the point where like you have these like intense jaw dropping moments, right? Like we mentioned with the icon battles, but then after that scene, like literally after those intense battles, you have this like the way that the gameplay is structured, like the gameplay loop, you have these nice calm like low point moments where you can focus on side missions, you can focus on hideouts, and you go to your hideout and then talk to people within your hideout, and and you even do like some hunts like on your board, like your hunt board. That's cool because you know what to expect once you get to those high moments. You're like, okay, I need a breather. Like now I'm
Yeah,
gonna get back to my hideout. Now I can probably do a little bit of side missions, and I like the way the side missions are kind of placed in the game in a sense, just because they're not Ubisoft, right? Where it's just like, all right, you started the game, here's a like 50
right.
side missions for you, and you can try to get to them like if you want, or you can just wait till the end. Like it's just overwhelming, right? Where this game, it kind of gives you little trickles here and there. Like you play a little bit of the main mission. Okay, cool. Now like maybe 4 or 5 side missions start opening up. You can do those if you want. You play a little bit more of this of the main mission. Another 4 or 5 open up. Like it kind of gives you it in little bits. And I like that they did that instead of overwhelming you with so many side missions all at once.
Right, exactly. And that's what's nice is the side missions are not overwhelming. And again, it is not an open world game. It's kind of open world, but it's not. It's not. I wouldn't call it linear. But there
Yeah.
are some open parts. And they just kind of trickle these side quests here and there, and it's like you can go and explore it, and you're rewarded for doing these side quests. So I enjoyed again, literally coming back to Earth
Yeah.
from some of these. Look, I'm telling you guys, literal spoilers. You literally coming back to Earth, like
Yeah.
it's that
And then,
crazy.
as far as the replayability, right? This game is roughly 50 plus hours long, right? Including the side missions. You can, but this is the thing, like post game, I find at first I was like, oh well, there's not much to do, right? Like you beat the game, now you can kind of do if you want, you can do like your bounty board if you want, or you can play like Final Fantasy mode, which is essentially New Game Plus. But that's it, right? But after like reading into it a little bit more and then actually playing a little bit more extra after post launch, there's a challenge that you can do where you can play what's it called, Final Fantasy mode again, but that actually gives you more weapons. Like you can actually have different upgrades for your gear, which is pretty cool. And then completely forgot about the arcade mode. There's an arcade mode that
You
you
could
can kind of
replay the
try out, and you
levels,
can replay the
right?
levels, which is pretty cool. So there is stuff to do, just not as much as I would like or had hoped.
Yeah,
Post game.
like a part of the map doesn't open up or anything like that. It's literally
Right.
just the same game, but you have different weapons and stuff like that. So it's not like when you complete, when you completed God of War, or you
Hmm.
completed
Hmm.
Pokemon that parts. There's other stuff, that things to do post game. There's no post game here, but that tends to be the norm in Final Fantasies here and
Sure.
there. I know Final
Right.
Fantasy 16 had a lot of post game, but then again, we're probably going to get DLC for this game, more
Yeah.
than likely. If we don't get
Yeah.
DLC, there'll probably be a part 2. Final Fantasy 16. So fun factor is extremely high. I'm telling you guys right now, if you have not played this game, go download the demo. It is free. It's a 2-hour demo, and
Try it
I
out. Yep.
dare you not to be hooked after that 2-hour demo. That's pretty much the entire game. Like when you get the gist of it, and then it gets so much more epic than that part.
Hmm.
So
Do you want to dive more into the gameplay? I know we talked about it a little bit, but do you want to dive into it a little bit more as far as like how robust the gameplay is, how not robust the gameplay is? Like, what did you like? Obviously, as a Devil May Cry fan, like you love the gameplay, right? That's kind of like your wheelhouse there. But did you feel like it felt too action oriented for a Final Fantasy game, or was this kind of like a good balance between RPG slash action RPG? Like, what did you think?
it definitely leaned more into more of the action side, right? I felt like it was closer to a Devil May Cry
Yeah.
than like a Final Fantasy. I think I told you this off camera. I felt like this game was not a actual, I don't know how to
RPG
say it.
game,
Not an RPG, but like it felt like a side game. Like it wasn't an actual Final
like a
Fantasy.
full main. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, I see what you're
it was
saying.
like a side thing. It wasn't even the it was like a spin-off. There you go. That's where it was a spin-off.
Okay.
It was a spin-off of a Final Fantasy 16 game. I'm sorry,
That
over
kind of that doesn't sound good in my
it,
opinion.
no, it doesn't sound good, but it is good because
Okay.
it is completely different in a very good way, and it reinvents
Okay.
itself. But I can see why other people were like, I don't like it because it's not the traditional. Like this game feels way better combat wise than Final Fantasy 15 did.
Yeah. Let's just throw it out there. Like it's a full blown action game. Like,
Yeah,
it's
it's
not
not
an
RPG.
RPG game. If you're looking for turn-based, if you're looking for, like, traditional, like, focused, like, more focused RPG, like Final Fantasy, or, like, more like that RPG elements, like Final Fantasy 17, for example, or I'm sorry, 17, Final Fantasy 7, for example, then I think you're gonna be disappointed, right? I think this is more leaning more towards the Devil May Cry side, like you're saying, and it is definitely more uh action oriented. So you're looking at, flashy combat, precision, and just style, like just cool, just looking cool while you're fighting.
Right, exactly. Again, like we put the sound together, you put this flashy gameplay, these cool things that you're doing.
Over the top action. Yep.
Exactly, and it's just a recipe for having a good time. And again, the story, we'll talk about story here. Story is great if you're into that. Like, if you don't like story, don't play this game. I'm gonna say it right now. If
Yeah,
you're not
yeah.
a story person and you're just looking for action, yes, but you're doing a very major disservice to yourself if you're not invested into the story, because the story is very strong here. We'll talk more about the story. About the story is great overall, but it tends to fall off towards the middle half of the game. But still
Mhm.
great. It's still like way better than a lot of other games I can think of off the top of my head. Is it the most compelling Final Fantasy story in existence? No.
Mhm.
But after the game, did I feel satisfied? Hell yeah, I did. I was like, okay, that was a good game. I enjoyed that. That was fun. So
Yeah, to just kind of give a little synopsis of what you're getting yourself into if you do decide to purchase this game. So basically, the game takes place in the realm of Valstia, which is, it basically surrounds, or it houses five mother crystals, right? And those mother crystals basically are the key to magic in this world, right? Magic is not called magic in this world; it's called ether, I believe,
yes,
and that's what Final Fantasy XVI calls it, right? So the game dives into what's called bearers, which basically are slaves, icons, which are summons, dominants, which are people who summon icons, and then it just gets deeper with lore. It gets deeper with the politics and all that good stuff. So this is the thing I like about the story, though. Compelled with the story, it dives into all these like deep lore stuff that you may probably feel overwhelmed, and you probably might forget about it. It might be underwhelming at some points because you're like, what is going on, right? But what the game does in an ingenious way, which I love, and I think more games moving forward should continue doing this, is the active time lore feature, right? We got to talk about that, because what it does is it gives you like this quality of life moment in the game, that if you're watching a cutscene, for example, and you don't know who's on screen, you're like, who is this guy? Or where am I? What is going on? Or like, if you haven't played the game for a while, you come back to it, you just press what is it, the touchpad in the middle, and it gives you like a glossary of each character, each event, each location that's happening right at that moment, whether it's cutscene or whether you're just playing in game, and it gives you a glossary, it gives you a synopsis of what is happening. And I think that is a genius. Like, do you understand how much work they put into that? Because that's happening for each, as you progress through the game, right? So as you progress through the game, you're able to get these like little glimpses of information in case you don't know what they are. Like, for instance, there was a good part of the game where I didn't even know what a bearer was. I'm like, what is this? Like, you keep throwing this name, this word around. I don't understand what that is. And then I just so happened to click on the touchpad, and then sure enough, they were talking about a bear. There was a bear right on the glossary. So I clicked on it, and it gave me a little synopsis of what that was. And I'm like, holy crap, that's perfect. Now I understand what you're trying to tell me in this particular scene.
Final Fantasy games don't do this at all. Like,
No.
you're just lost. You're like, what are you guys talking about? And Final Fantasy 13 is a perfect example of that game. You don't understand what's going on for the most
Right.
part, unless you look and see, like, you do some research. This game has a research right there. You click the button, it's fully accessible, and it is an amazing feature that all games should adopt, because it is gets you that much more invested into the story, and it almost feels like you're reading a book. Speaking of books, story wise, this game, if I had to compare it to anything, it is, you take Game of Thrones, you take Dragon Ball Z, and you take Naruto all together, and that is what this game is. It is all of
So
those three things, and it is good. It is good. It is good. And if you're a fan of any of those three things, you're gonna be right at home with this game.
you did mention that it dips off a little bit towards the middle of the game, right? And I have to agree with you. It did, right? There was a point where I'm just like, it felt a little too much at times, and I'm like, all right, this game could have probably ended maybe 3 or 4 hours ago, right? Because there was a point where the story wasn't its main point. It was just getting into like the real deep moments of the game that I honestly didn't really care too much about. I liked where the story was going in the beginning, and then it just kind of like swung into a different kind of direction that personally I didn't feel was that important in my opinion, or if it just didn't feel like it was grabbing me as much, right? So it does dip a little bit, and I think most people will agree on that end. But overall, like Rob said, the story is compelling. It is very like the high point of this game because it is kind of carried by the amazing cast that they have, amazing characters, along with the gameplay. The story follows through along with it as well.
Yeah, and here's the thing too is that this game is not perfect. I'm going to go ahead and just say that right now. It's not a perfect game, but it is so close to being perfect. I don't know if you want to go into improvements for this game.
Yeah, let's do that. You want to
Yeah,
start it off, or
yeah. Let's go improvements. So a few things here, guys. Is the story again does fall off in the top the
middle half of the
middle half of the game, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
those side quests we're talking about, they're great the way they introduce them and they kind of trickle them in. It's great, but they all are like the same animation. You do like the same. It becomes kind of fetch questy. It's like this person goes, "Hey,
oh, it's
go
100% fetch questy.
yeah, go kill this thing for me, and then come back here and I'll give you something." And that's it.
Yeah.
That's the whole exchange. Or talk to this person, or go collect this thing. It's either you're killing something, you're collecting something, or you're talking to someone, and that's
Mm.
literally the side quest. What I didn't like about the side quest is there's a lot of the characters um, in the game, right? You have a lot of the main characters, but they don't actually play with you in your party. They're there, but you don't take control. They're just kind of assisting you and stuff like that. And they kind of left their development towards the end of the game, like how close they are to Clive. Some of the
Right.
touching parts. This is a spoiler, but you get Joshua as a permanent person in your party. Like it says, now wherever you go, Joshua will come with you. But that's not until you like the end of the game. And I'm like, why wasn't this like, why didn't this happen earlier?
Right.
Why
Along with
didn't
Jill, you
along with
have the
Jill?
same situation with Jill. Yeah.
Right. So then now that to me, after I had like those full parties and they're gonna follow you everywhere. That's when it fully felt like a Final Fantasy game to me. I'm like, okay, I got my homies with me now. Um, so that was kind of one thing that I'm like, okay, they could have improved, fleshed out their stories or their interactions with you on the battlefield a little more with
Mhm.
that. Again, Barnabas, some of the characters are great, some of them not so much. Again, Jill was a low point. Jill, the female protagonist, she's okay. She kind of feels kind of bland compared to other Final Fantasy characters. We also have Barnabas. He was coming out as a really badass, gonna like be like the super epic, and he kind of fell flat a little
He
bit.
fell flat. Yeah.
Right. Ultima, the main antagonist, he's fine, he's okay, but then after a while, you're like, okay, dude, shut up. Like, I get it. So, um, yeah, it was little things like that. But again, nothing terrible. I'm not gonna say like, oh, like it was that bad. It's like it's pretty good still.
Yeah. And just to piggyback off of some of the things you said, the side quests, for example, although most of them, like you said, were very fetch questy, there were a lot of great ones, a lot of memorable ones, in my opinion. Like till this day, I still remember some of them that were just kind of embedded in my head because they had this like dark kind of story behind it, kind of something that would I typically gravitate towards more in gameplay where it comes like just to dark little stories and stuff like that. So there were some gems in these. The only thing that I think took it back a notch for us was the fact that they were all just crammed into the end, right? They
Yeah,
weren't
that's exactly what I'm
spaced
saying.
out. They weren't
Yep.
spaced out the way we would like for them to be. And I feel like if they just spaced them out a little bit more, that would have been much better instead of having like all the fetch questy side quests in the beginning and then the real good ones towards the end.
Right.
Because although I said they give you little bits and pieces, little bits of side quests throughout the game, towards the end, you have like an abundance of sight. Like they just throw like 30 at you, and you're like,
Oh yeah.
what is happening? Like why? Like I just want to finish this
There's
game, and
like
now there's
4
like 30 of them. Like
Yeah,
what
there's
is
like 3, 4 extra hours of just side quests at the
just
end of the
side
game, and
quests?
they just dump them all at you at the end of the game. Like it's like, okay, if you hit this point, you're gonna finish the game, but finish all these side quests right now, real quick. And then they just keep. It's like I swear, I think it's like 12 side quests that they dumped on you, like right at the end, and you're like, where was this before? Why didn't you spread this out? And they were good side quests. So they left them
Yeah,
for
they
the
were
last.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they fleshed out a lot of the character story. So that is again one of the things where for next time, like maybe do that a little better next time.
My bigger gripe in this game, right, and it kind of goes hand in hand, was the combat, although phenomenal, like we just talked about. At times, it got a little repetitive, right? At least, especially towards the end, in my opinion, because
Yes.
now we continued on this 50-plus hour game, and it kind of goes hand in hand with what we were talking about with the gameplay, right? The gameplay was very solid gameplay, obviously, but there's not enough of that RPG element into it, and therefore you're not getting that RPG side of customizing Clive as much, right? You're not, although there's a level system, it doesn't matter. Like that level system means nothing besides improving your HP, improving your stats, and it doesn't give Clive any advantage besides that, right? So you grow to level 40, whatever, 50, but then there's no like extra attacks that he gains. There's no extra abilities that he gains himself. Not, I'm not talking the icons itself, but just him in particular. He doesn't gain any new abilities. I wish that were kind of the case in this game, because it can kind of customize him as a character, and then you can customize his attacks, but also the icons that you have. I love the fact that you can customize your icons in a sense of like you can have 3 of them at once, and then you can customize and mix and match their attacks so that you can kind of make it more your play style. But I just wish they kind of added a little bit more to that. Maybe added more icons at once. So maybe 4 icons that you can change interchangeably instead of just the 3, and then have Clive have another set of just different attacks that he can use himself. Other than that, it felt a little repetitive towards the end, and then it just felt really easy, right? Like towards the end, you're just like botting guys,
You're
like you're
so
just
overpowered.
botting dudes, and you're so
Yeah.
overpowered. It's like you're just mashing buttons at that point. So I will say the difficulty in this game is really, really easy. I mean, you could die in this game. If you do die, a rare chance that you do, but then they give you like all your potions back, and maybe then more. I think they give you extra potions just to be like, in case you die, here's more. And so it's nice, but it's like you don't need to do that. Let me have a little bit of more challenge in this game. And I think that repetitiveness plus how easy the game is towards the end, it made it more of a chore to finish it. Again, I'm not saying it was terrible. I was like, I want to keep playing this game, but towards the end, I did felt like, okay, I'm just killing these dudes. They don't mean anything anymore. And now I have a bunch of side quests that I just have to finish. Like, I just want to finish this game. You know what
Right.
I
And
mean?
then towards the end of the game too, the enemy variation kind of falls flat as well. They just kind of do a copy and paste enemy, and it's just like this.
Right.
Yeah, it's basically like the flood from Halo in a sense. They just were just like, okay,
Yeah.
here's these random, they all look the same kind of guys. So again, there are low points of the game, but they're not very low. And I think what you were saying about the how Clive didn't feel like super fleshed out with his leveling up, because you
Yeah.
leveled up but it didn't feel like anything. I think they fixed that by you being able to play as all the different characters, right? That's Jill, that's Joshua, that's Sid, right? If you could actually like take control of your party members and give them their own skill tree and be able to, I think you would feel a little like the gameplay would feel more robust instead of just pressing Clive and just pressing square and triangle and using his abilities. Whereas if you could switch to different characters and they had all similar game styles where like it was action oriented,
Mhm.
I think it's a little better like that, in my opinion. But
Yeah, for
um,
sure.
they tell us like you're just gonna play as one character and that's it. So that might put people off if you're a true or a diehard Final Fantasy fan. But if you're an action game fan, this is you can't miss this game. You can't. You need to play it. So
Oh, 100%. Yeah. If you're a Final Fantasy fan, I still recommend this game, honestly, because although it's not for everyone, it is definitely for the majority. And I think you should try this game out, at least give it a shot. Like Rob said, at the very least play the demo. It's not the best like vertical slice because it is the beginning of the game, so you're just learning a lot of the mechanics. But it's a pretty damn good demo. It gives you a lot of what you're going to be doing, and it gives you just the scope of this game. So I can't recommend this game enough. I think this game has done so many great things. Of course, like Rob said, there's a bunch of lows that are low, but they're not to the point where it would hinder your experience in this game.
Well, here we are. What are we giving the grade for Final Fantasy 16? Me and Kelvin collectively discussed everything about it, and the gaming duo's official grade is, Kelvin.
Final Fantasy XVI delivers an amazing story with unforgettable characters, over-the-top cinematic moments, godlike battles that make one of the best Final Fantasy mainline titles, right? The difficulty was almost non-existent, and better placement of side quests would have been made this game a little bit almost near perfect, right? But that doesn't take away from an amazing experience from start to finish. We give Final Fantasy 16 on the gaming dual scale a 9 out of 10.
Boom. And there you guys have it. 9 and 10, Final Fantasy 16. Are you going to go play this game? You should go play this game.
You should.
Because it's fantastic. So, Final Fantasy game or Final Fantasy fan or action fan, doesn't matter. Play it. Could be the game of the year. Probably won't be.
It is mine.
It is Kelvin's, and it's my game of the year. But will it win game of the year? And with that, thank you guys so much for listening in our first review.